there has been this increasing tension about the role that influencers and celebrities play in society, about their elite status, and about what kind of accountability they should have. Okay, these are the people you're going to put forward in front of us to be our idols in such and such way, to be the people that we want to model ourselves after in such and such way. We want to hold them to a very significant standard. It's not revolutionary, but it is something. The violence of empire is inescapable. And so you think I'm going to be sitting around interested in hearing somebody talk about how pretty they are, or hearing another generic love song? You're out of your mind. This video was not sponsored. It was made possible due to my lovely patrons. If you would like to help my channel grow, if you'd like to support my work, if you'd like to help me be less tired and form coherent sentences, join my Patreon. I have long written about and talked about how art and popular media and the people behind it can be a force for good. And this is a conversation that has been controversial online. We've talked about it on the channel before in my, Celebrity Politics Matter video. But essentially, a lot of people are trained to think that musicians and celebrities speaking up about social issues is unimportant, that people who think about celebrities and their politics, think about artists and their politics, are wasting their time. And what happened at the Grammys doesn't necessarily confirm what my thoughts have been, because the Grammys are not an indicator of society fully, not at all really, less and less every year. But some of the things that happened at the Grammys were a confirmation of the reality that I think we're entering, which is that we are entering a new type of renaissance. And that renaissance is going to be squarely focused on, globally, people making art and consuming art that has a focus on social issues and has a focus on the people, so to speak. Let's start here. Bad Bunny won, I believe, 3 Grammys, including the Album of the Year for Debí Tirar Más Fotos, which became the first album to win that award that was not in English. There's a lot to talk about. So let's talk about what that means. For one, we can talk about how, upon receiving the Música Urbana Award at the Grammys, Bad Bunny gave a speech essentially protesting ICE, right? He said, before I say thanks to God, I'm going to say ICE out. We're not savage, we're not animals, we're not aliens, we're humans, and we're Americans. Now, keep in mind that none of this stuff is what I would describe as like politically radical. I don't think that Bad Bunny is a socialist or a communist. As much as I would like to encourage people to get more and more radical with their politics, to become more and more egalitarian and more critical of empire and of capitalism, you also can still see the shift happening. Not just in terms of like what the current celebrities say, but in terms of who the next celebrities, who the next stars are going to be. For several decades, it was accepted in the United States that the next big star of the US, and globally, therefore, through American soft power, would be an American, usually white, an American who makes English language music, and who is not particularly political. Not just in terms of their own existence, right? Because everybody's existence is political, but who doesn't put out political messages overtly. Maybe they do humanitarian aid, maybe they do, animal rights activism. Those things have their place and are valuable, but having messages about what the American government stands for, or about, what empire does, that's not something that has been historically encouraged, at least in the past 50 or so years, by American institutions. And over the last 6 years especially, now that we're in 2026, it became clearer than ever just how out of touch and disinterested celebrities, including celebrity artists, were from the common person. And so when somebody makes a speech like Bad Bunny did,
Before I say thanks to God, I'm gonna say eyes out.
Not only with this speech, but with the music that he's put out, he's presenting messages from marginalized people. And even though that's not enough in a lot of senses, no one thing can be enough. This is a reflection of how much people have been exhausted with what's normal. I think people are genuinely exhausted of normal celebrity culture, of normal pop culture in the United States, of depoliticized artists. And from how positive the reception was to this speech and how positive the reception was to his album, to the point where the Grammys felt the need to crown it, I think that's an indication that that's where we're going. Another thing you have to understand about Bad Bunny's message is that it hasn't just been this. Partially, he is more outspoken when he is speaking his native language and when he is not in such a formal situation as a Grammy ceremony. but also partially because of him performing the Super Bowl. This is actually a kind of more pared down version of the kinds of messages that he puts forward. This was a recent interview that he did where he talked about his political views a little bit. And again, it's not specifically ideological, it's not this radical leftism, but it is something that you're not used to hearing the biggest artists in the world talking about in such a way.
Empleados. Los políticos son empleados del pueblo. Ellos no se supone que manden. Este no es el país de ellos. Ellos no son los dueños de Puerto Rico por estar en el Capitolio. Ellos son nuestros empleados. Literal. Tú lo pusiste ahí con tu voto. Si no cumple, sácalo para el carajo.
So what he says there is that politicians are the employees of the public, and that it is the public's vote that puts them into office. We are instead used to hearing, this kind of deference to politicians as the ones who are in control of politics and the most powerful people. And he is commenting specifically to subvert that idea. He is specifically saying they're not the owners, they are our employees. And if they don't do the job that we put them in office to do, we should get them the fuck out. That's Bad Bunny's message. And he's also somebody who has talked about a lot of different political issues. I want to talk about this because over the past 6 years, as I've mentioned, with this shift in how people have seen celebrities, whether it was their flippancy during COVID lockdowns, to their silence during different political moments, Black Lives Matter, to what's happened with Gaza, to what's happening with ICE, there has been this increasing tension about the role that influencers and celebrities play in society, about their elite status, and about what kind of accountability they should have. The elitism has become so visible and so shallow, even from people who are not that elite in terms of class status. Like, I don't think Vanessa Hudgens is like a billionaire, but her comments during COVID about like some people are just gonna die, right? That really struck a chord with people. And it's part of, as well as the kind of ridiculousness we've seen from influencers and how shallow and how, profit focused they are, the kinds of sponsorships that they peddle out there, the kinds of messages they put forward. It led to a lot of people talking about this idea of the death of celebrity culture and the death of influencer culture. And I think what we're experiencing in the next few years will be a rebirth of a new relationship with public figures, because public figures will never go away. The celebrity industry is not going to be completely dismantled overnight. But people are now saying, okay, these are the people you're going to put forward in front of us to be our idols in such and such way, to be the people that we want to model ourselves after in such and such way. We want to hold them to a very significant standard. We want to push them. And if we don't get what we want out of them, similar to Bad Bunny's thoughts about politicians, if they don't do what we want them to do, we will fuck with them. We'll call them out as much as we can with the limited amount of power that you can get from social media posts. We'll use that to make our voices heard and to make people uncomfortable. And that's the result. The result is that you get a landscape wherein, Billie Eilish is making commentary about, immigration and saying, no one is illegal on stolen land. After which Fox News makes comments like this,
We're all here because of legal immigration. It's the illegal part and the fact that they choose to ignore those facts, but then spew silly opinions like Billie Eilish, which was comical what she said. This is why, shut up and dribble, shut up and sing, because you're super talented, but you don't know what you're talking about.
This kind of reaction to public figures, right? It's becoming more and more marginalized, because even the right wing has very clearly adopted a policy where they want to empower their own, where they want to empower the Sydney Sweeneys and the Jelly Rolls of the world. Speaking of the Jelly Rolls, actually, I thought what he said was for a change, in fact, because of the fact that he's never interesting. But I think what he did was quite interesting, because he's been very MAGA aligned for a while. He was hanging out with Christine Nome. He was doing all a bunch of shit. And then when he won his Grammy, he talked about God, and he said, the Bible changed his life, and he said that Jesus is for everybody. He's not known by one political party. He's not owned by a label. He's Jesus. Anyone can have a relationship with him. And then when he was asked about the situation with ICE, he said, I hate to be the artist that sounds aloof. Yeah, all right. But I just feel so disconnected from what's happening. I didn't know politics were real until I was in my mid-20s in jail. That's how disconnected you are when you grow up in a drug-addicted household, which is bullshit, right? Just to ask Eminem about that. And then he says also, people shouldn't care to hear my opinion. I'm a dumb redneck. And think about not just the irony, but like how bastardized this music and this art has become. Because as this other user points out, the whole point of country music is that the opinions of poor rednecks do in fact matter. The roots of country music, when we're talking about outlaw country, when we're talking about Johnny Cash, when we're talking about, the Highwaymen, We're talking about people who were speaking about rural country life in a perspective of trying to bring attention to it, trying to show people why it's socially and politically relevant, talking about how messed up society is, and putting forward an egalitarian message. Those are the roots of country. And that was why it was empowering and why it resonated with so many people who lived in the rural countryside, is because it was like representation for them and it was empowering for them. But because of how much through neoliberalism, art and media culture have transformed into this don't say anything, artists should just do art, musicians should just make music, shut up and dribble landscape, where we reward people for just being talented and pretty, and we reward them even more when they shut up about what's going on with our lives. Now we have a country music represented by people who say, I'm a dumb redneck, don't listen to me. You know, like imagine that. Imagine just how bastardized a genre and a subculture has to become, that you now have it at this supposed prominent level, and the people who are the faces of it are saying the opposite of the message that was intended with the music, the opposite of the message that was central to what made that music real, that what made that music popular. Like, it speaks for itself in a lot of ways. Now, I have a lot of issues with like the way we call people out online, and somebody like Jelly Roll is an easy target, but you know, sometimes we also have situations where people can get out of hand with how they call people out, and it can also feel quite dispiriting to see people put so much effort or energy to it, ostensibly, where they could be putting more energy into locally building, local organizing. There's a lot of points where we can be critical of call out culture online while still recognizing that it has this importance. And again, its importance was demonstrated at the Grammys a couple nights ago. A lot of people are very quick to say this shit doesn't matter, what celebrities say don't matter. These are the people that will, you know, be talked into saying that nothing matters, right? We have a tendency to default over and over again to this idea that nothing that we do ever matters. And so the oppression that we deal with simply cannot be fought against, which is a very convenient narrative for the oppressor. But as long as people understand that calling out celebrities is not supposed to be the fulcrum of your politics, it's not supposed to be the most important thing you do, then it's good that people keep doing this, because it's now pushing the standard in the media and music and other art industries to be like, I have to say something about ICE. Especially in a time period where between COVID lockdowns to witnessing genocide in Gaza, witnessing genocide in Sudan, to witnessing, you know, our global elites dominated by white men who traffic children, right? But also people of other backgrounds trafficking children for rape and violence, and having an elaborate network of doing that. The billionaire classes are literally like comprised of pedophiles, comprised of prominent like rapists, as well as people who rape neighborhoods, who kick people out of neighborhoods, who kick Puerto Ricans out of Puerto Rico and build crypto utopias on it, who buy up the real estate in your neighborhood, who destroy the air quality in your neighborhood by building data centers, right? This reality is being made very clear to us every single day, and it's inescapable. The violence of empire is inescapable. And so you think I'm going to be sitting around interested in hearing somebody talk about how pretty they are, or hearing another generic love song? You're out of your mind. And so this brings us also to other things that happened at the Grammys, right? Like a widely critiqued performance by the young pop group Cat's Eye, who performed Gnarly. I'm just going to give you stills because I don't want to get copyright struck. But even fans of this group were saying, you know, this wasn't the best choice of song, this meme song where they talk about fried chicken. There's this critique of vapidity, where even people who support specific popular artists are willing to be critical of them, or at the very least willing to be critical of their management for pushing them to do conformist art or very out of touch art that doesn't speak to the times, that doesn't speak to what people are going through, that doesn't speak to the human experience in any meaningful way. I actually found this really interesting article from a student journalist in North Carolina where it talks about like this ongoing discourse about Cat's Eye, which I think is really fascinating. It's a response also to the Single Internet Girl and the problem with that song, and how many people just not only found it to be dumb in a similar way to Gnarly, but also uninteresting. There's a conversation about Hybe, right? The company that manages Cat's Eye, and the fact that these projects that Hybe puts together, like the reality show that put together Cat's Eye, are very exploitative, and they push these young people, often minors, to be working at a pace that's not sustainable, to be as conformist as possible from beauty standards to the types of music that they make, to be in competition with one another, and often, making their interpersonal relationships really fraught. And then all in the service of what? music that doesn't even connect with people anymore anyway, because it's about dumb shit, because it doesn't have a message, because it's shallow. You know, it's eat zucchini ass music. What's the point? You're gonna put these girls through all of this hell and push them this hard, and then the industry's gonna push them this much, and you're gonna build this big fan base for them. But why is it meaningful if this is the type of stuff that they're going to put out? If they're not at the very least going to be able to express themselves, express their personal ideas, not just like, oh, they don't have to make a revolution song, but like music that is a little bit more personal for them, is a little bit more humanizing for them. It's space that they're not given as artists. This is another indication that the art world is changing. And I mean the arts in general, music in particular here, is changing. People's tastes are changing. What people care about is changing, right? They don't want Dubai chocolate Labubu music, what Vivek says in the chat. People don't want that shit, like increasingly. And I know that some of this stuff still gets popular and it gets viral on TikTok, but the days in which TikTok dances and TikTok viral hits were the paradigm were short-lived and they're ending. You know, a song being catchy and being spread in different TikToks is no longer that interesting or important. And maybe it'll get you more streams and make your business work out at the end. But overall, it's not a sustainable strategy to create an artist, to create a legacy that people can actually connect with in the way someone like Bad Bunny does. And then, you know, we have people like Taylor Swift. I've talked about this article before. This article got kind of ripped apart on this pop culture chat subreddit, which is infested with Swifties, because it's criticizing Taylor Swift and her silence on the Trump administration using her music. Why has Swift, who once wanted to be on the right side of history, said nothing? You know, you still had this prevalent sentiment, right? Oh, we're giving celebrities so much attention to be our political voice instead of actual activists and political figures, right? But this is how you actually push social norms, is by critiquing the people who are the foundation for social norms, critiquing the celebrities that we are being pushed to support financially, to model ourselves afterwards. Looking past that machine and saying, fuck this person's actually very sus, this person's actually not connecting with me at all. It's not revolutionary, but it is something. And because of that sentiment and because of the popularization of that sentiment, you're going to see more and more that somebody like Taylor Swift is going to lose cultural capital unless she shifts her strategy to try to accommodate this change in people's demands. You know, you can put up all the numbers that you want. We know Billboard is rigged. We know radio is rigged. We know streaming platforms are rigged for you. We know you have the capital. Are you actually going to make music that resonates with us, that resonates with what's going on in society? Are you going to speak out about what's going on in society to some degree that lets us know that you actually care about the people who are supporting you? Because if not, people will shift. So let's get back to Bad Bunny as an example of this. This is the biggest artist in the world, arguably. And this is one of the most talked about songs from his recent album that just won Album of the Year, Debí tirar más fotos. Lo que le pasó a Hawaii is a song that compares the colonial plight of Hawaii to Puerto Rico. The title means what happened to Hawaii. The chorus in English is translated to, they want to take away my river and my beach, they want to take away my neighborhood, and they want for grandma to go. He says not to let go of the flag and not to forget the lelolai, which is a type of singing, essentially, that is done by Caribeños. El lelolai, it's a part of Puerto Rican culture. Que no quiero que hagan contigo lo que le pasó a Hawaii. Like, because I don't want to happen with you what happened to Hawaii. And you have this actually really well done analysis that connects this with recent events. This says in Puerto Rico, public politicians and federal politicians locally as well have treated historically Puerto Rico in the same way that the United States has treated Hawaii, which is to say in this exploitative way. They cite this private chat by a past governor and publicist, Edwin Miranda, who said, I saw the future and it's beautiful because there weren't any Puerto Ricans. And this is a big part of Bad Bunny's speech. He's always lashed out against Puerto Rican politicians who are compradores, who are bought out by the United States, who are controlled by the United States, who maintain a colonial relationship with Puerto Rico of extraction, of turning, Puerto Ricans into cheap laborers or worse, and using the island for the ready profit making and consumption of elites. This is something that he's been talking about in his music, and it doesn't just stop there, right? That politician and other politicians that we're speaking about in Puerto Rico, these are people that he was calling out years ago. This was when Ricky Rosselló, who had this massive controversy because of his handling of Hurricane Maria, and because he also had this group chat leak where he was talking shit about people, where he was misogynistic, where he was talking shit about Puerto Ricans, including that message that was just shown. He came out to this protest. He actually put out a song as well with Residente Calle 13 called Afilando los Cuchillos, cuchillos. You know, it's called Sharpening the Knives, which was also about protesting this regime and getting these people the fuck out of there. And then, you know, here he was at this protest.
Personas que salieron a manifestarse por primera vez, que quizás tenían el miedo, pero ese miedo se acabó. Puerto Rico no se va a dejar. Bienvenido a la generación del yo no me dejo, los quiero Puerto Rico.
Bad Bunny has been on this. These are also examples of how he has supported the LGBTQ plus community. When he went on Jimmy Fallon in 2020 to promote his most recent album that was about to drop, he wore a t-shirt that says "Mataron a Alexa, no a un hombre con falda," which was a message in support of trans people in Puerto Rico, particularly referring to a trans woman named Alexa Negron Luciano, who was murdered in a transphobic hate crime, right? Also, remember when he did this music video for Yo Perreo Sola, where he was wearing drag, and it wasn't just that he was wearing drag in this music video, but he also themed the music video to support essentially the new wave of feminism and to talk about femicides in Puerto Rico or in Latin America, right? So Bad Bunny has always been supportive of LGBTQ plus people. Even his first television appearance, when he went on Jimmy Fallon, he talked about Hurricane Maria victims. He said more than 3,000 people died and Trump's still in denial, right before performing his newest song. This was right at the beginning of his career, right? And it's not just Bad Bunny. I wanted to also mention this speech by Doechii, who I think is the new face of hip-hop, is the new star of hip-hop. And I think this speech cemented it. This is at the BET Awards last year.
I do want to address what's happening right now outside of the building. There are ruthless attacks that are creating fear and chaos in our communities in the name of law and order. Trump is using military forces to stop a protest. And I want y'all to consider what kind of government it appears to be when every time we exercise our democratic right to protest, the military is deployed against us. What type of government is that? People are being swept up and torn from their families, and I feel it's my responsibility as an artist to use this moment to speak up for all oppressed people, for Black people, for Latino people, for trans people, for the people in Gaza. We all deserve to live in hope and not in fear. And I hope we stand together, my brothers and my sisters, against hate, and we protest against it. Thank you, BT.
This was a really powerful speech. It was really well worded. And it also captured, you know, an artist who was willing to speak out about what was literally happening outside of the studio, right? This was happening right in Los Angeles as these essentially riots were breaking out, or these protests were breaking out against ICE. And she used her platform, right? And she said it. I think it's my responsibility as an artist to speak about this. And look at the reception, right? I mean, you know, one video on YouTube won't say it all, but you have a lot of people who are saying, like, I'm unfamiliar with her music, but if she sings like she just spit truth right there, I see why she's winning awards. This is what true American sounds like. This is the way you use a platform for good. Thank you. She's brave and patriotic, right? This is what people want. Okay? They don't want the artist that talks about themselves over and over again. They don't want the artist that only speaks about their own progress, their own desires, what their relationship was like. They want that artist to at the very least situate themselves, situate what they're going through in what's going on in society, what's going on in the economy. You know, people are starving, bro. People are dying. People are being shot in the streets. People can't afford to pay the rent. People are having to pay taxes to a government which uses them to drop bombs on kids. People are absolutely fed up. They're not interested in just supporting some, 38-year-old artist, rapper or singer or a dancer or whatever that's like, check out how cool I am. Check out how many people I've made rich. Check out how many people that I've put on. I'm so cool. I'm so rich. I've done cool things, right? Those messages only work for those older artists because they've been around for so long and they've had so much attention that we just naturally pay attention to them. This next generation is going to have to speak to the times, or else they're going to be waddling around in relevance. I mean, a lot of people have talked about why is somebody like Addison Rae or Tate McRae or these other young white pop artists, Gracie Abrams, why does it feel like they're not relevant? Why does it feel like even though they're getting a huge push by the industry and they have some, pretty successful hit songs, why does it feel like people don't care? And that's what it is. People don't relate to them. Even the stuff from the older artists, people don't relate to as much. People don't care about as much. Because why would I? If I'm hungry, if I'm struggling to pay the bills, if I'm fed up with my government, why am I going to spend time and energy supporting somebody who doesn't seem to be interested at all in what's going on? Yeah, Billie Eilish, she said fuck ICE, and she said no one's illegal on stolen land. And Phineas has been on with like Hassan before, right? These are artists that are younger that are paying attention to the times. And you can be very cynical about whether or not they actually care, whether or not they're just doing it to conform to the times or not. But the fact that the times demand that they speak up for it, regardless of what the artist's intentions are, that means that you guys have pushed that to be the case. That means that you, the artist's consumer at home, you are the one who has made this media landscape what it is. Your concerns are being heard, right? And they're not going to be addressed in any real way unless we build economic political power. I shouldn't say any real way. They're not going to be concerned in any lasting, significant way if that's not paired with economic and political solidarity building. But this still means something. This still is going to engender people to build more and more in that direction. And it's going to mean, it's more than just about who's going to make money and who's going to be the popular star. It's about what kind of messages people are paying attention to and whether or not they live by those messages, whether or not those messages inspire them. I have people in my own life that I know that I've been friends with for a while who have become more politically active because they've been inspired, because they've seen what's going on, and have gone from being people who, might have generally had some progressive views but didn't really engage too much because they were focused on their own lives, to sacrificing time to doing mutual aid work or to campaigning, to canvassing. And yeah, I would say probably Billie Eilish does care. And it's not just them, right? Somebody like Hosier is a fascinating case for me.
One of your favorites?
Why is it not restarting? I hate this fucking website. So this is him calling for a Palestine free of occupation and genocide.
Impose starvation of men, women, and children. Palestine is also free to move towards self-determination and statehood, which is something that the country of Ireland asked about 100 years ago. And I'm so glad, I'm so grateful that the international community responded positively.
So if you don't know, Hosier has been doing this, right? Hosier has been on this wave politically for years. And a lot of people don't particularly pay attention. They know him as a Take Me to Church guy. They almost say that like it's an insult, like Take Me to Church isn't a great song. Whole other conversation, right? But these kinds of artists are people that have these significant careers. I've been to a Hosier concert. It was packed. He had tens of thousands of people in there in Ohio. He has a significant amount of motion. He doesn't get that Grammy Award. He doesn't get that mainstream look nearly as often. But he's built this massive fan base that's quite loyal to him, in great part because they know him to be someone with integrity. They know him to be somebody who is connected to what's going on socially. They know him to be someone who's not just going to speak about something because he thinks it makes him look cool, or he thinks it's the way to, achieve some type of personal goal. He does things because he's drawn to them from a humanistic standpoint, because he cares about the issues behind them. Who's that guy who chanted death to the IDF 5 years ago that was career ending? That's not what happened. So he chanted death to the IDF in like 2025. That wasn't 5 years ago. Or unless I'm thinking about somebody else. But if we're thinking about the same person, Bob Villain, it's a group and they're still going on quite well. That happened a year ago. The charges that were against them kind of got dropped. And there's been several artists that have built like significant fan bases and significant amounts of support, in part because they are known to have integrity. And this doesn't just apply to the music industry, okay? I want to shift over to talk about movies a little bit, because Sinners is a film, among others, that has been nominated for Best Picture as well as 15 other awards. And Sinners was a movie that really did numbers. It was super successful, not just at the box office, but in terms of public discourse, and it's been received extremely well. And that's a movie that, as you can see by these kinds of videos that people are making, right? Sinners Decoded, breaking down the symbolism in Sinners. They put the truth in movies, right? Spiritual symbolism in Sinners, Sinners Easter eggs, Asian American politics. This is a movie that had a lot to say about society. It had a lot to say about social and political issues, historically and in the present. It helped us learn about, things going on in the Mississippi Delta in the early 20th century. It brought attention to that, while also bringing forward themes that we can connect with and resonate with in today's day and age. There are multiple content creators who have done great videos about Sinners. FD is obviously one who people will know about. This intro montage where it shows this clip from the Ryan Coogler interview, I think is really telling.
Again, now about vampires as a concept, because I think Karl Marx often used like vampirism to explain capitalism, right? And he constantly used it as a metaphor. And I thought it was so brilliant in this, and maybe I'm reading this wrong, but the minute they kind of lose is when they seek the white man's money. It's good me saying it, but I need you to say it.
Well, I said it with the movie, but I can't double down. Like some of the stuff you asked me, but I can't like.
I think that speaks to a lot of what's possible when it comes to how you can use artistic mediums and the technological developments that have undergirded artistic mediums in today's day and age to revisit important messages, right? I loved Sinners. Obviously, everybody talks about the juke scene. It's an incredibly well shot scene. The cinematography is really impressive. And he uses that cinematography to communicate a powerful message about Black music, how it connects us with the ancestors, it connects us with the people who are yet to come. It's a way in which, through engaging with music, through dance, through that connection to music, we can speak to something spiritual, something that is far beyond the contemporary and far beyond being locked into the physical. And it's a really beautiful and moving scene that a lot of people were talking about afterwards. And it wasn't just the fact that they pulled off something with special effects, or what they pulled off with Michael B. Jordan's character and the special effects behind, doing the smokestack twins. But it's about the message. It's about a social message, a message about society. Even what Ryan Coogler has said about the role of the Ku Klux Klan, what was being spoken to about, like in that interview, about the white man's dollar, about capitalism, about the vampires, and exploitation, different forms of exploitation. These are things that he, as a person who has made films about the Black Panthers or supported films about the Black Panthers, as well as, in October of 2023, signing a letter to secure a ceasefire in Palestine, right? Which at the time was something that was highly controversial, and it is still something controversial to this day. Not that a ceasefire is like the most radical demand. This is somebody who does know about politics, and he doesn't have to just say a political opinion like fuck ICE, or say a political opinion like, death to the IDF. Those things, would have their place. Those things are encouraged as well. But he doesn't have to do that so overtly, because he's using his art to communicate something that people will resonate with, to communicate something that means something to people, that they can carry on with in their lives, right? I thought the Morbid Zoo, who I'll be talking to soon, hopefully, for my Patreon, had a really good breakdown of what was so powerful about that movie.
And they constrict every bit as much as they shelter. The spiritual power of blues, or Irish folk for that matter, is its vulnerability. And vulnerability, by definition, is dangerous. It invites predators. So the reason I think this movie is hitting so hard right now is because these are kind of the conditions we're living in. The art world has been effectively taken over by interests that want to suck all the life out of it and convert others to the same cause. And that blows. It's scary. It's depressing. It ruins the party. But the way Ryan Coogler is discussing this problem is also kind of encouraging, I think, because the obvious monstrousness of the vampires acts as its own point. Coogler is implying that this kind of parasitism is so deeply offensive to the human spirit that we recognize it on sight. There's an uncanniness about this kind of thing that we just have a natural aversion to, even if we can't articulate what exactly is wrong.
This is a great video in general. You should watch the full thing. But notice again, I highlight that clip because notice what she's speaking about. She's speaking about how this movie, set in the early 20th century with, very like magical realism kind of themes, this movie is speaking to what we are going through. It's something that we can apply to the media and art industries right now in general, which have been sucked up by AI, sucked up by Marvelification, by Disneyfication, by the need to just present projects that are easily profitable because they traffic in using old IP and a bunch of special effects and a bunch of actors that you already know, the same faces over and over again in order to sell themselves. That kind of thing people are tired of. Right? The movie industry is a perfect example of the same dynamics at play with what happens to Bad Bunny, with what's happening in music right now. You have this openness more and more to not just films from different backgrounds, people from different ethnic backgrounds, but films from other countries in different languages, films from Brazil, from South Korea. You also have this openness and this hunger for films that say something about our times, that say something about capitalism, about exploitation, about racism. And don't just do so in a look at me, look at how noble I am, like white people solved racism movie type thing,
like with Green Book, but like speaking to our times in a way of you can watch this movie and you can apply it. You can actually actively apply it to what you are seeing. You can actually actively apply it to what you're going through right now, to what political situation you're living under. You can watch Sinners and see the vampires and think of that the next time that you run into AI content creators. The next time you run into people talking about AI films or the future, the AI only film that just came out recently. You can think about it the next time you see exploitative, rich, billionaire white men predating on artists, taking pictures with artists, signing them to their labels and then mismanaging them and exploiting them for every last drop. The next time that you see a film that is using intellectual property and a couple of diverse faces to traffic a film about very boring, very vapid, very conservative ideas of power, of good guys with guns, propaganda. This is the type of vampirism that you can apply this type of lens to. Of course, Sinners is not the only film nominated for Best Picture, okay? You have multiple other films, and one in particular that I'm interested in talking about, drum roll please, everybody. Actually, why don't you guys guess what film I want to talk about now, in comparison or in contrast with Sinners? Why don't you guys just guess? Because there's a few that can fit here. I'm waiting. Someone asks about Wicked, someone says One Battle After Another, another person, One Battle After Another I have thoughts about and I made a video about. But the people who guessed Marty Supreme or the Timothée Chalamet one, y'all are correct. Shout out to Lou Saffron, shout out to Crunchy Skull, shout out to Stephen Wings. I want to talk about Marty Supreme. And I'll get out of the way really quickly that the director of this film, Josh Safdie, allegedly had a sexual assault of a minor take place on his film when he was filming Good Time with his brother in 2017. They cast a 17-year-old girl to play a prostitute to do a simulated sex scene, and then the actor that they cast to do it with her apparently sexually harassed her on screen. This dropped just recently, okay? But moreover, it also features Kevin O'Leary, who you can see here talking with Donald Trump and Nicki Minaj, his newest crony.
The entrepreneurs in America, I'd like to thank you, Mr. President, because we create 72% of the jobs. Companies 5 to 500 employees, and all we care about is policy.
You know, you get the picture. He's also somebody who's a raging Zionist, apparently. So these are some of the names associated with this project. That's one conversation. But I want to have a conversation about Timothée Chalamet. There was a video that came on my radar recently. It might have been suggested to you as well. I did give it a dislike. No disrespect to this content creator. But the video is called The Curse of Being Ambitious. And just from the comment sections alone, you can kind of see that there's a type of energy being associated with Timothée Chalamet in his recent press run. This level of passion is refreshing in the age of cringe. To a society of insecure people, confidence looks like arrogance. In a world of nonchalant aura farmers, be Timothée Chalamet. I will say, for one, Timothée Chalamet is a very talented actor. He's been great in a number of films that I've really liked. I will also say that I don't think it's necessarily wrong of him to care about wanting to make great projects. But as you notice this opening montage, you'll see that there's something quite different about his approach to art and the kind of way that he sees art versus what we were just talking about in terms of analyzing Sinners.
What I've learned is that the best thing you can do is just fail.
Not this part. This part, he's just a kid and talking about failure. This is probably a good message. This is part of the press run he's doing now, this next clip.
I know the classiest thing would be to downplay the effort that went into this role, but the truth is, I'm really in pursuit of greatness. I know people don't usually talk like that, but I want to be one of the greats. I'm inspired by the greats. I'm inspired by the greats here tonight. I'm as inspired by Daniel Day-Lewis, Marlon Brando, and Viola Davis as I am by Michael Jordan and Michael Phelps, and I want to be up there.
I want to talk about why I hate that, okay? I want to talk about why I hate that sentiment. To be fair, it's not about the content creator at all. I can't say with certainty what he's saying in the video. But why I hate those kinds of comments and why I hate Timothée Chalamet's pursuit of greatness is that it is an idea, for one, that has been pushed on us for a long time, that we should be in pursuit of greatness. And especially in the neoliberal era, in the 90s and 2000s, in the 2010s, everyone from Kobe Bryant to, Leonardo DiCaprio was put forth as somebody that, we should be inspired by because they are in pursuit of greatness, because they always want to do something great. But it's an ambition for ambition's sake. And that kind of ambition for ambition's sake is jarring now because it is so disconnected, again, from real life. It is so disconnected from every person's struggle. It is so disconnected from society. How can you, in the age of, watching people be assassinated on camera by ICE agents, be wrapped up in some pursuit of wanting to be great and great in the standards of like Western media? Why is that where your focus is? And it also misunderstands what that greatness is in the first place. It misunderstands what greatness is because greatness, which is a concept that has been laundered and exploited for so long as pushing yourself really hard, as putting 110% into everything you do, is not actually about somebody's sense of power or desire to be seen as great, which is the whole imagery that we get behind it. What we really associate with greatness is something that's meaningful to us in our human experience. And we've never been taught to see it that way because we've been taught this capitalist mode of thinking that says we should exploit ourselves as hard as possible, exploit our body and our mind and our souls as hard as possible so that we can achieve the biggest and best results. And that is what greatness is. But now, especially in a time period where you're going up against a movie like Sinners, which Ryan Coogler doesn't talk about, I just want to be so great. Ryan Coogler talks about, this is a message that I wanted to put out. Michael B. Jordan is somebody who is quite ambitious and does want to be great in a lot of ways, but also approaches his work and as care for craft and as care for what the director wants to put out, what the director wants to say, especially when he's working with Ryan Coogler. In an age where Bad Bunny wins Album of the Year because of an album that is dedicated to Puerto Ricans, that is dedicated to speaking about exploitation of Puerto Rico. That is what people care about. They want to resonate with something. They want to see in somebody's art a sense that they are actually cared about. And more so, a sense that the things that they're going through, they're not going through in silence. That people are paying attention to the news just like they are. They don't want to deal with an artist who is just wrapped up in this pursuit of some abstract greatness, this abstract Michael Jordan in white boy actor form. People don't want that. The only people who still want that are these people who see themselves still in that old way of thinking. In that way of thinking that pretended like the empire was a safe space. In that way of thinking that pretended that exploiting oneself is equivalent to greatness and justifies one being above others in the hierarchy. That kind of thinking no longer will work. And I don't care if they give Marty Supreme every single award that they've nominated it for, which I don't think that they will. It is very clear what the winner is from a greatness perspective, you can say, but really from a societal impact perspective. In 2025, Sinners was the movie that made people connect with their lived reality in a more empowered way. Dark Nix in the chat says, that was an interesting way of putting greatness. When I was younger, someone shoots down that concept and didn't let me communicate nuance as to why I want to be the greatest at what I pursue. I think that idea, like, be the best at what you pursue, it can be empowering, but more often than not, it is actually the opposite. And I run into this so often with younger artists that I talk to, people who want to achieve a lot. I run into it with myself often because of my training. There's this sentiment of, I just want to do something meaningful. I just want to be the biggest and best, or I want to be as big and good as possible. I want to be as great as possible. And unfortunately, a lot of times people think this way and then they never grow. Usually, for every one person who thinks like this and is Timothée Chalamet, there are a million people who think like that and never grow in their careers. And the reason is because they're thinking more so about themselves. They're thinking about themselves and they're thinking about success in a socially recognized standard instead of thinking about others, instead of thinking about the world that they live in and thinking about how they can connect with people in it. You can have a beautiful voice, a beautiful, beautiful singing voice. But if you're using it to make generic music and you're just putting out 100 songs a year and you're like, I want to be great, it's not going to matter because it doesn't connect. I think it's the same conversation that carries over in terms of what we talked about with the Grammys, what we're talking about with music. It's disconnected. Especially when we talk about Wuthering Heights, this supposed adaptation of Wuthering Heights by Emerald Fennell, which cast Jacob Elordi, a white actor, as Heathcliff, who very much should be not white, probably Romani. She's describing it as, everyone who loves this book has a personal connection to it. You can only ever make the movie you imagined yourself when you read it. I was focusing on the pseudo-masochistic elements of it. And that is an artist who is disconnected because she's not understanding that what she's saying is, I pictured a white guy. I pictured Jacob Elordi because that's sexy to me, and I have no care for the source material that very much portrays somebody who is not Jacob Elordi. And I don't care about how the act of storytelling connects people with things that they experience in real life. I just care about putting something out there that seems cool, right? Who is that in service of? Nothing special talking about, the concept of service for the oppressed, right? The work has to be in service of something. If the work is in service of greatness, which is this empty signifier that we usually associate with financial success, a lot of recognition, a lot of views, it'll lead us to Jake Paul 100 times more than it'll lead us to Denzel Washington. But if the work is in service of poor black people, if the work is in service of oppressed peoples, colonized peoples, and that is something that you are clear about, that the work is meaningful and you really care about the meaning of the work, then maybe it will achieve exactly what you would associate with greatness. Marcela Estrada puts a good spin on it. It sounds to me like he can't reach that since greatness is something that is designated by the community, like you really don't have control over it or shouldn't. That's exactly what I think is happening, that a lot of those people in the comments are interpreting as, oh, people are just haters. People are just not striving anymore. And, you know, in this era, it's so great to see somebody who's actually sincere about wanting greatness and people just don't get it. It's like, no, people don't get it, quote unquote, because they don't see why something like that should be rewarded. And they think it's strange that somebody should, in this time period, when you have access to so many different causes and communities that you can contribute to, that your focus should be on your own sense of greatness. And that sense of greatness should be something that's safe and that aligns with the capitalist ideal. That you should be focused on, I want to be recognized, instead of, I want to help others. I want to recognize others. And that's the great paradox of it, again, because it's the people who do that, like Bad Bunny, who then get the album of the year. Calling people haters is very neoliberal minded. I think it often is, Jonas. It's true. And yeah, Kristen Stewart was cooking with that take. You're right, Forgetful Stranger. Men have this masculine approach to acting where it's all about striving and, oh, I'm putting every muscle fiber in my body into making this thing great, instead of just, can I tell a story? And that's why male method acting becomes such a fucking big deal. And, you know, Timothy Chalamet talking about the contact lenses that he's wearing or the glasses that he's wearing to make his eyes look a certain way. Emphasis on that, and not emphasis on, I wanted to tell a story about what the 50s were like and who was being, you know, oppressed, or, you know, what kind of emotional connection I have with somebody in this story. There is some of that just because Marty Supreme strives for that greatness. And so Timothy Chalamet is like, yeah, that's my emotional connection. But that kind of theme rings very, very hollow. And especially, you know, if the movie is as critical of a Marty Supreme, of the main character, as I think it might be, it's quite ironic that your takeaway as the actor should be, yeah, that's I relate to that. I want to end this segment by putting people's attention towards art that isn't exactly the paradigm, but represents what is the movement moving forward, what is the Renaissance. And to me, it's these smaller content creators and artists who are talking about making art, or who are making art with a view on social change, social engagement. This is a video by Monica Trinidad called Art is Not Enough and You Still Need to Make It, where she talks about,
heavy,
you know,
honestly dystopian times. As we face rising authoritarianism in the US, neighbors being disappeared, families being torn apart, trans people under continuous attack, and basic infrastructure just literally crumbling in real time. Sitting at our desks and finding that spark to make art can feel really difficult and small. I'm thinking of that image of somebody throwing a bucket of water and then you pan out and you see like this whole landscape on fire. That's kind of what it can feel like. And yes, we know art on its own will not end capitalism. It will not make ICE disappear. It will not ensure our basic human rights. And we still need to make it. Here are a few reasons why I believe we should still be making art in very difficult and heavy times. Have you ever felt really alone in a feeling or in a situation, and then you stumble upon a video or the comment section of a video, and then you just have this huge sigh of relief, or you even, you know, tear up because you're witnessing someone describe exactly what you're feeling? That's what visual art can also do for people. Seeing a poster or somebody wearing a t-shirt with an affirmative statement like protect trans people or no human being is illegal could be exactly what that person needs to see in a moment of utter despair. So our ability to create and share art that pushes back against attempts to divide us is one way that we can dominate the public narrative and advance our collective power.
This is a great point, and one of many great points as to why art is quite important. And it's something that's been alienated from us. We have been taught to think that art is celebrity, that good art is famous art, and that what one artist should strive for is individual greatness rather than connection with other human beings. That's what we've been taught. We've been taught that social change has nothing to do with it. Collective power has nothing to do with it. And I think, among other things, like this point that art can reach somebody in a time where they need it is quite fundamental to what makes something like Sinners great, what makes something like Debí tirar más foto great, or it could just make what you want to create tomorrow and put out for 5 people great. The Renaissance is not just us staring at Da Vinci this time, or marveling at a great symphony. This time, the Renaissance involves all of us having equipment. It involves all of us having instruments, all of us having voices, all of us having words. The Renaissance involves all of us engaging in art, the creation of it, the consumption of it, the discussion of it, the advancement of it, for purposes that are not just one's individual achievement, that are not just capitalist profit seeking. And I think it's really important also to point out that art alone is not enough, but nothing alone is enough. Mutual aid, feeding people in your neighborhood alone isn't enough to stop authoritarianism, isn't enough to stop the right wing, isn't enough to stop capitalism and colonialism. Neither is violence, okay? Neither is building an economic bloc, neither is trade with China. But you have to use everything at your disposal as a person who cares about changing the world in order to change it. And you have to trust that you are just one of many, rather than a great among many. Rather than thinking of yourself as the big fish in a small pond, think of yourself as a fish in a body of water. Rather than thinking about making yourself this great figure, think about how great the collective is and can be if it's brought together in pursuit of a goal. One can say many things about the state of political organizing in America right now, but look at how people united in Minnesota did a general strike, protested, and how that affected the ICE campaign in Minnesota, which eventually led to significant failure for the Trump administration, demoting the ICE czar. It was a failure of a project, and fascism will fail. The question is how many people it takes with it as it dies. The question is how many people fall into its trap. The question is how well we prevent it from rising again. That's our goal, and it's very hard, especially when you're exposed to the vastness of the universe. You're exposed to the vastness of humanity. It's very hard to accept that you are just one person and that you're small. And so that's why we're so conditioned to be doomerist. We're so conditioned to say, it doesn't matter. Nothing ever happens. We're so conditioned to just focusing on criticizing other people, which is often valuable, but focusing on doing it with a focus on taking those people down and not building anything up. And with a focus on not putting ourselves out there, not making ourselves vulnerable, because then people would have the license to do the same thing to us. You know, I can go online and I never have to propose a single political position. I never have to put any effort towards raising money for anybody. I just have to say America bad. I just have to say white people bad. I just have to say Trump bad. And I can get a lot of views and a lot of likes. And the hard work of actually connecting with people, bringing people together, putting resources together, the hard work of actually combating systems of oppression, sometimes through direct action, through boycotts, through strikes, that hard work, I don't have to think about it. The failures or the inevitable things that won't be able to happen once I choose something, that I don't have to worry about. I just have to worry about criticizing other people's choices, and I never have to choose for myself. And so that is the other side of it. On one side, you have people who are obsessed with their individual greatness. On the other, you have people who are staring at the collective just so that they can spit on it. And the renaissance that we are going through is one of every single person from different walks of life, from different positions, all engaging with the collective, all doing their best as individuals, making the best of themselves as individuals for the purpose of empowering the collective, doing the best art that they can with the purpose of empowering the collective. That is how it works. There is no individualism versus collectivism. There is you as an individual, your skills, your talents, your perspectives, your specific position, and how you can use that to contribute to other people's lives in a positive way, to contribute to marginalized communities, to help people who have been made homeless by raising money for them. And so it's also artists that are not necessarily the biggest artists in the world that are going viral with this beautiful music. Like I really like this artist Monrovia, right? Who radicalized you? Nothing radicalized me. I was born feeling bad for inanimate objects. This message in the background and then performing their song Heavy Foot. This is an Afro-Appalachian artist who has a solid following, almost 1 million followers, who is signed to an indie label and sometimes puts these videos out and they get 50K views. Sometimes they get a couple million views and 120,000 likes. And the purpose is making music that connects with what people's social experiences are, that uplifts people who are the downtrodden, that speaks about mental health, mental illness, housing, that speaks about gender inequality and racism. You know, another great example, and this is gonna have to be muted because of the song being copyrighted, but this is an artist named Kirby. Not the biggest artist in the world, not an artist who's necessarily striving for greatness in the typical way that we're taught, but who has music with message. And that's the type of message that is exactly what I'm speaking about. That song went super viral, and it didn't lead to a Grammy Award, may not lead to a Grammy Award, didn't become a Billboard Hot 100 hit. But what it was something that resonated with the people. In a song that has lyrics that are talking about, are you for yourself or for the nation? Are you for yourself or for the people? This is an era where we need art for the people, not art for popularity. This is an era where we need art for social change, not for individual idolization. And what we will be seeing increasingly over the next few years, however it takes shape, probably more so at the indie level and at the everyday level than at the institutional level, because the Grammys are designed to be things that don't give this to us. But what we'll be seeing more and more over the next few years is more people striving for that, rewarding that, caring about that. And I think that matters.